Hello and welcome to Geek Warning, the podcast that puts the world's most interesting cycling tech and tech conversations into one place. I'm Dave Rome, Senior Tech Editor with Escape Collective, and joining me today...
Ronan and Laughlin, Tech Editor at Escape Collective.
Good to see you, Ronan. How you doing?
I'm good, although I'm kind of reminded that I don't know if I'm getting old or getting experienced or what, but bikes that I reviewed when I first started doing this job have now a new generation of them coming. And so I've been through a full life cycle in this role, which, having never had a job for more than 2 years before that, feels weird.
I've been at this where I'm the equivalent of the teacher that is now teaching the kids of the kids that I used to teach. Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, we're up to Generation 7. I'm pretty sure I did Generation 2 or Generation 3 of that bike. Anyway, so...
Scary.
Let's not dwell on how grey I've gotten, but rather we've got a full episode ahead. And yeah, we've got all the usual suspects that make a good Geek Warning episode. We've got some things on our mind. We've got some fresh tech to talk about. And you and Aaron will wrap up with a Ask a Wrench, or as I'm calling it this week, Ask Ronan and Dave, from our members, and just for our members. And yeah, I guess it's worth noting that it's just the two of us this week. So a bunch of time zone changes and, or difficult time zones, should I say. And a few staff away at launches means that we're, it's a smaller panel this week. But I think we're going to have plenty to talk about. So yeah, speaking of launches, I think this one's a bit of a juicy one. But Alex Hunt was just recently away at the Tracker in Girona, Spain, a big gravel event, arguably Europe's biggest gravel event now, kind of like the Unbound of Europe. And he spotted, while at a camp for said product. Yeah, I mean, a few Canyon athletes were racing a new suspension fork with from DT Swiss, and a bit of an awkward one because like he's at the event for said product, but at the same time, Canyon's own athletes are racing the product in this very public mass participation event, and even putting the fork on their own social media pages and really promoting this thing, even though they're not revealing it. And yeah, I guess it's something Alex ended up talking about, fully openly admitted, you know, I know more about this than I can disclose, but then went ahead and gave us just a little morsel of information and some photos of the product. And I guess, yeah, rightly so, some commenters on that article were pointing out, like, hey, there's other new things on that bike. Why aren't you talking about that? Opens up a bit of a can of worms, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't really know where to go with this one because it's just kind of weird. It's like we had a period there where brands would, or manufacturers would, put new products into pro racing, and then with the understanding that these things are going to be on TV, and as such they're going to be spotted, and then you can write up, you can make some sort of predictions as to what it might be, or talk about what you can see or whatever. But it seems to have moved on to a point now where it's just like, how do you even describe this? Just, we know everything, and then we're still expected to write spotted articles. So I mean, it was always it was fun, but it was a little bit frustrating because you could end up writing about the same thing 3 or 4 times. So you could do like a spotted article, and then you could do the official, embargoed news piece, and then you could do your review. And well, it's 3 times, but I don't know, just. It was a way for brands to like double dip in terms of getting more coverage out of the same product, or at least that's how it felt for a long time. Or
building intrigue.
Yeah, and now they kind of still want to get that extra intrigue and extra coverage, but it's just like it's been milked too far. I think it's just it's fake, and that's my problem with it at this point.
Yeah, so we've had a few, like, this is really like how the media sausage is made, but I think it is quite an interesting one because it's like anytime you see a new bike release, I mean, this sort of plays into it. You've got the media embargo, which is basically the brand gives media the same time of day, same date of when you're allowed to publicly talk about the thing that they've told you in advance. And it's often like a kind of an email agreement that you won't talk about this before and that you'll keep confidential on it. And yeah, the idea is that the brand can get all of its ducks in a row, can ideally get stock into the shop, and then they sort of know the deadline that when all media will sort of hit go on it if they choose. Where it gets a bit murky is you've now got some brands that are sort of putting media outlets under NDA on these things, saying, you're really strictly, no one in your outlet can talk about this, otherwise we're going to sue the pants off of you. But then you also have brands that are like, there is this media embargo in place, but here's also a photo of the product seen at this race. And if you want to run this photo and do a spotted article about it, then, feel free to. Just call it, say you spotted it. And I think that's kind of getting into this weird area where do embargoes still need to exist in the way that they once did? Like, do they still serve the same role if brands are desperate for any coverage they can get, regardless of how they get it?
I think embargoes are important for the audience, believe it or not. Because the question here, the question here is, well, why? Like, if we serve the audience, why wouldn't we just talk about the stuff that we know? And the reason embargoes I think are important is because without embargoes, what you get is, Kaylee has explained before, this is what used to happen. You get a situation where tech editors like ourselves are not encouraged to spend the time to write an in-depth review and give it everything we can possibly know about
it's first
the product.
To publish.
It's first to publish, and as such, you just quickest article you can possibly put together, because you're chasing page views or whatever it is, and getting there first means you probably get ranked on Google better, and you get fucking all the views going, and that is obviously less important to us at Escape, but we are here to serve the audience and our members, and page views they're not even a secondary metric for us, but nevertheless, it does create issues if others are racing to get those page views. Just to be clear, I've no issue with them racing to get page views either, because that's the business model that the companies who employ these writers
for most media
have decided. That's the way they operate, and so it's
how an advertising based media model exists, is through clicks.
And it's why we chose a different model. We chose to prioritize the reader, which I think I will say is probably the more difficult direction to go. But if you wonder, again, we talk about it all the time, but if you ever do find yourself wondering, well, why should I pay for this Escape thing? It's because we are not incentivized to do the quickest articles we possibly can just to chase the page views. We are incentivized to do the most in-depth articles we can that explain the things in the way we think is required for you, our paying audience.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't always get that right, but that's certainly the aim and the objective with everything that we write. Like everybody, we make mistakes sometimes. Yeah,
I'd say sometimes we fall into old habits, as far as like chasing the new shiny thing, or perhaps, talking about the thing that we feel like everyone else is talking about in an event, and then, it's sort of, I'll just say it like that DT Swiss fork on that canyon that has been covered. I mean, that's kind of one that in hindsight feels a little strange, because we do know a lot more about that product than what we've published, and we've claimed, we've called that out in the article, but even then, it just, to me, it feels a little bit odd. But anyway, let's not stick on this for too long. But I guess the how the sausage is made is an interesting one, and I guess we're forever trying to refine our processes there, and sort of for us, the goal is to just keep continuing to be as transparent as possible. And sometimes we'll tell you how the sausage is made, and sometimes we'll, I guess, be a little guilty of playing the game, so brands continue to talk to us in the future. But certainly we'll respect embargoes when brands give them to us, but also our policy is that if we see a product out at a mass participation event under sponsored writers, with those sponsored writers that have put the product on their own social media pages, we will cover that product. If we see a product out,
we might cover that
if we think it's interesting. Yeah. If we see a product out at a major race and no one is talking about it, but it is still at a major race, like a UCI or a pro level event, we might still cover it. And I guess that's our point, is like, even if there's an embargo in place, if us and 2,000 or 3,000 other writers are looking at the thing, and then people are taking photos of it and putting on socials and all that, chances are we're going to cover it.
And the might is because, number one, it has to be what we believe would be of interest to our audience, and number two, that it doesn't, writing that up doesn't come at the expense of writing up something that we think would be of more interest to the audience and more valuable to the audience. The audience being our members.
Yeah, good. All right, well, let's move on. And I guess speaking of things spotted at races, this is actually one I honestly don't know anything about other than what I've seen in photos. But Campagnolo 13-speed EPS Wireless. Ronan, what's the story? Where was this spotted? What is it?
Bike rumor, actually. Corey Benson over there had spy shots of what appears to be a new or an updated Campagnolo Super Record Wireless group set raced at the Eschborn Frankfurt UCI World Tour race. I think that was on the 1st of May, that race. It's on the 1st of May every year. And it's 2x13 speed. The existing wireless group set, which I covered 2 years ago now, was 2x12 speed. And so the update here is an extra speed, 13 speed. But to achieve that, it seems like they're using a new front and rear derailleur and obviously a new cassette with an extra cog in it, which, looking at the photos, is not just the E-car cassette, which is already 13 speed. This is a more road-specific group set. It was spotted on the Cofidis World Tour team's bikes, so it's 2x13 for the road from Campagnolo.
Yep, and I guess the shifters seen on this one look basically identical to the existing 12-speed wireless shifters.
Which, if anything, needed to change.
And I think from what I've seen on some forums, there might be photos floating around of a different shifter design that looks like they kind of rewind the concept a little bit and take things back marginally, perhaps bringing back that beloved thumb button. So
I had heard the first rumor I heard about this, and it was like, this is unrelated to the bike rumor post, but the first rumor I heard was that they were going to bring back the thumb shifter.
They need to. They really need to.
And I wasn't hearing anything about 13 speed. So it's interesting now that 13 speed has surfaced, and the shots that we've seen with what looks like the existing levers would suggest some sort of backward or sideward or upward compatibility,
which is cool.
But I wonder if the actual full release of this, when it does come, will maybe have the return to the thumb shifter as like the actual lever to go with this new group set. And I think we can be maybe hopeful of that, because as much as I wasn't a fan of the button setup that Campag went with on these new levers, I can understand that a Cofidis rider in the middle of the season might not want to change back to a different setup. The thumb shifter, mid-season, just in the middle of races and that, you don't really want to be having to think about, which button does what and that. So
this is a crazy thought, but if they did keep cross-compatibility open, so you could run that, say, a new 13-speed shifter with the 12-speed and a 12-speed shifter with the 13-speed, do you foresee a day where they keep both in production and just give you the choice?
I don't know. That was one of the questions I was going to have for you. Is like, what do we think this means for the wireless group set that is only 2 years old? I mean, if they replace it this quickly, it sort of screams.
I think. I mean, I probably hate on Campagnolo more than I should, because I actually truly love the history of the brand. But I think they failed with 12-speed wireless. I think the shifter alienated a lot of loyal Campagnolo customers. I've heard this firsthand from customers who had been on Campagnolo for 20 years, had never had considered swapping away. They'd been through every single dodgy issue of EPS, 3 generations of 11-speed EPS, each one fixing previous issues with the generation before it. They were still loyal to Campagnolo, even though that EPS group set probably cost them 10,000 or 12,000 Australian to keep running. And yet, this 12-speed wireless was like a stretch too far. And like, yep, I'm now a Shimano user. And that I heard from a number of people, like enough to just be like, all right, that's not one person's opinion. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if their sales have really tanked on this new group set, and I think the answer does lie in that shifter. I think that is. I'm not going to say the rest of the group set's absolutely perfect, but I think that is the barrier they need to overcome. And by going back to a familiar shifter, I think they probably will win back some of those customers. So
the other issue with the 12 wireless was just the size and bulk of, especially the front and rear dividers.
It's not an
and
elegant
these
looking
ones,
group set.
Yeah, I think these ones, I think they look smaller.
Hard to tell.
Reserve the right to change my mind on that, but it's still, there's no decals on it. It looks like a fairly finished product, but it might not be entirely finished just yet, and so I'm kind of hoping the final version does look a bit better again, even though what we're looking at here looks better than the existing 12 speed.
Yeah, so I mean, Campagnolo has been 13 speed for a while now with its gravel group set, the e-car that you mentioned before. I mean, I remember it being a top seller at the start of COVID, so I mean, it's been around since probably 2019 at this point, maybe even earlier. I had heard rumors of them
2020 that came out.
2020. Okay, so I had heard rumors of an EPS version following pretty soon after the mechanical version came out. And we haven't seen that. So again, like I'm actually looking at, I guess this new group and thinking maybe there's going to be a high level of parts shared in between this and perhaps an ECAR EPS group. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see all of that come out in the next few months. But anyway, I think that's enough of things that we've
That kind of gets to one thing I wanted to discuss about this one was just like, obviously the other big change is 13 speed, and I think you are right in that it's probably 13 speed because they can then have shared parts and technology and all sorts between a new e-car electronic group set we're assuming for the past 5 years will come at any moment now, and whatever this new road group set is, but 13 speed for the road and 2x13 speed. What's your thoughts on that?
From the rumors I've heard in the industry, whether I like it or not, all the major players will be there within the next 2 years.
Okay, it's a bit like saying, the only two certainties in life are death and taxes. The only
There's
other
an extra
certainty
cog
is
in the
that
back of your
the
cassette.
group set's supposed to keep coming with an extra cog.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's not a far-fetched prediction / rumor, right? Like Campagnolo's already been at 13 speed with its ECAR for a while. SRAM's already there when you look at Explore, and we're starting to see that being used on road bikes. Shimano's the one that's missing there, but yeah, I think there's a trend here, and I think we're going to get 13 speed. I personally, this is my own belief, we don't need it the same way I felt we didn't need 12 speed. But I think as long as things are electronic, then things are precise enough to actually give you a good functioning system. But the more gears we add, the more good functioning mechanical system is doomed. And
two questions, Dave. First question: are you sworn to secrecy here?
No.
Okay, so you're entirely speculating. And why would you not want an extra gear? What could go? Why not? What's the pros and cons?
So I think there's many different ways to look at it. I think if you look at the ECAR way of doing things, you end up with 13-speed chain that is narrower. I think from the tests I've seen done by, like, say, Zero Friction Cycling that I collaborated with when I was back at Cycling Tips, that chain ends up being less durable. You end up with needing more precision, specifically in the hanger interface. So things become more sensitive to adjustment, and there's just more chance of like chain rasping or chain noise or it being out of adjustment. The benefits of the extra cog is just that you get fewer gaps between the extremes. So you can have a wide range cassette with fewer gaps, right? So you can have like SRAM Explore 13 speed has, a 10 to 46 tooth cassette. But the 10, it goes like 10, 11, 12, 13. Like it's really tightly spaced at the smaller cogs. So there's benefit in having more gears, but yeah, the downsides are like you introduce these complexities around setup and it needing to be precise and potential wear issues. With all that said, I think SRAM's approach to 13 speed is the smartest I've seen, where they, through the use of the UDH and through removing that UDH, which gave them extra space, they've basically kept the 12-speed chain and the same spacing as 12-speed. So like the cog widths and everything like that are the same. So you get the exact same durability, but with room for an extra cog. And I think if brands are able to figure that out, then I have fewer complaints, even if I still question the true need for it, especially in a 2x system.
Yeah.
But we're getting there anyway, so yeah, I mean that's my opinion. We're gonna have 2x13 speed regardless at some point. I'll probably talk about how, while it's not what I wanted, it probably does work great, and the world will continue to spin.
I'm going to be the optimist here, and just until we've ridden anything, just assume that it all works perfectly and it's flawless and it's just as durable as before, and that's probably because I want wide range cassettes with closer jumps between each sprocket. I want my cake and I want to eat it. The one thing that you did touch on there was like UDH and that, and clearly this is not a, we've heard rumors of a Shimano take on a UDH and that, and Campag doesn't seem to be going that way at all. So yeah, that would eliminate some of the issues that you just highlighted with an extra cog.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, like mounting directly off the axle does eliminate all the woes of hanger alignment. So, yeah, I think the way SRAM has introduced an extra cog is quite a smart way to do it. Watch this space, I guess. All right, Ronan, that was a long segment about things spotted and things that we have and haven't seen. Let's talk about something that we have seen. It's just come out. Cannondale have the new Synapse. This is a bike that you and I were kind of racking our brains on quite a few months back with Lockie Morden doing a lap of Australia, trying to go for like the fastest known time around Australia. And he was on what we knew was a new Cannondale, but we didn't know what it was. Turns out it's the new Synapse, which is their endurance road platform, long-standing endurance road platform turned weird all-road bike now, because it fits 47mm tires in the front, 42mm in the rear. It has a storage hatch in the down tube, and they have their Smart Sense technology, which sort of integrates the battery centrally into the frame and powers a provided rear radar and light off of it. We actually did talk about this bike in our info review episode that also just posted a couple of days ago, so you can hear a little bit about it there, or you can find it just about anywhere. Head to Cannondale's website for a full explainer on this bike. But Ron, I think you had something on your mind related to this bike.
Yeah, I mean, you've put something else on my mind there now, and that I'm pretty sure at the time our speculation was this is a new Synapse when Laughlin was riding that round, and that's an example of where we knew nothing other than the screenshots we were grabbing from Laughlin Morton's Instagram that this bike exists, and yeah, pretty sure we thought it was a Synapse. Anyway,
what added to confusion on that is we knew the Super 6 Evo Gravel or whatever they used to call it, right? They're now calling it the Super X again. We knew that was due for an update, and it kind of looked like it could have been that. And we were also seeing that bike being used in like events where you would use a gravel race bike, and so we're like, is this a gravel race bike or is it different? And then Cannondale did release that Super X, which replaced the Super 6 Evo SE or whatever the hell they called it. And we're like, hang on, that still doesn't look exactly the same as what Laughlin Morden is riding.
You've hinted that I've had something on my mind about this, and that's it, because a week after I wrote that Synapse article last September, Ted King was using a new Super X at Gravel Worlds, and we didn't know it was a Super X at the time, but we were like looking at it and going, is this Laughlin's bike? Is this a different bike? And yeah, on your mind is Cannondale now has effectively 3 identical looking drop bar bikes. All its drop bar bikes effectively are now created. I can't say created from the same mold, but certainly created in
Design
the same
language
vein.
is the
Yeah, design language is what I'm looking for.
yeah.
Language is not my strong suit. But yeah, they all look so identical. There is, I mean, the most noticeable difference, and really the only visually noticeable difference between the Super 6 Evo, the Synapse, and the Super X is that the Super 6 Evo has a much more aero profiled seat tube. Um, but apart from that, side on, they look very, very similar. And I can't decide how I feel about that because on the one hand, I think it's I think it's pretty neat in that, and it will give riders more option and more. The riders are perhaps more likely to choose a bike that best suits their needs rather than the bike that they best like the look of, because the three bikes look the same. And so, if you like the look of that bike, then choose either the Synapse or the Super 6, depending on the type of road riding you do. Or, yeah, the new Synapse has clearance for, I think, did it say
It was
48 tires or something huge?
it was
Yeah.
42 rear, 47 front. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off. I'm waffling at this point, but I guess the cons side of that equation though is, yeah, it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah. Well, I
And if
want
you
to
don't
get to
like the
that.
look of it, then you're none of
Yeah.
the Cannondales are going to work for you.
No, I want to get to the confusing part of it, but I guess just to very quickly offer some insight into the design language conversation is I actually think one of the brands that does this most consistently, or at least used to until last year when they introduced an e-bike that broke this rule, is Santa Cruz. And Santa Cruz is actually now in the same parent company as Cannondale, which is the Pond Group. And Cannondale, for years and years, like I'd say at least a decade, I would say, had very consistent design language in their entire entire bike lineup. So you could kind of just see a side-on profile, and even though the Santa Cruz might have been designed for a completely different purpose, you know, mine might have been a cross-country race bike, one might have been a downhill race bike. You could point to it and be like, "Yep, that suspension linkage, those frame shapes, those profiles, those like all of that." If you were to switch off the lights in a dark room, you'd be able to sort of still tell it's a Santa Cruz. And I can't help but feel like Cannondale is sort of borrowing from that a little bit here, where they're just like they've found something that sort of they can identify their brand to and have followed that path. And yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think when you look at the bike design, I think there's some structural elements that make sense to me, like the really skinny sort of swooping seat tube is one where you can be like, you can look at that and go, yeah, that actually looks like it would be comfortable. And then they claim it's comfortable. But yeah, I think there's some brands that do that sort of consistent design language really well. BMC is another one that came to mind. Years ago, they used to have their ISC, their integrated skeleton concept, I think it stood for, and that was kind of like that weird seat tube cluster that first appeared on the original T machine. Like if you imagine back in like the Floyd Landis or Tyler Hamilton days on Phonak, they had that really like awesome seat tube lug, and they sort of kept that design language for years and years, even though it in theory didn't help with creating a lighter bike, or it didn't really do anything other than just a visual appearance. But that was them just saying our bike is different, it's not the same as everyone else's. So yeah, anyway, I'm not opposed to finding a design language that's unique to them and sort of doing a whole lineup of different bikes. But with that noted, let's get back to your point about it being a little confusing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, before we get into that though, like to your point, I'm I do kind of like it, but also part of me is torn because I just, if you're designing bikes for different purposes and then applying the same language to them, I just wonder, is there some compromise there? And and I think this would be
Typically,
much
yes.
less, yeah, in terms of
Yeah.
performance. I'm thinking, and I think it's probably less of a case on the road,
Yep.
where demands are within the same envelope, at least, let's say. Whereas if you have and I don't know anything about Santa Cruz. I'm fully not. I know about Santa Cruz. I don't know anything about mountain biking, but
Sure.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm like, could you really make a bike that fits within the same design language work well for XC and downhill, which are two examples you give there?
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
the
not sure.
argument is no. Like there's compromises, and there are actual significant differences between those bikes, despite them looking kind of similar. Um, but yeah, I think another example I'd give with design language is Pinarello. I think for years and years, they had their their Onza stuff with the non-straight tubes. It was in the fork, it was in the seat stays of the bike. They insisted on having like this really unique sort of organic swoopy shape, and I think from a pure engineering point of view, you could argue it added weight and didn't add much more benefit than that. So,
Oh no, it
but
also added drag.
cool. Okay. Perfect. So, but you'd look at it and you'd immediately know it's a Pinarello, and some people absolutely loved the look of it. Others didn't. But yeah, I think there's time and time again, there's examples of this in the bike industry working, and just as any other industry, it's a popular thing to do in automotive, for example. But yeah, anyway, I think Cannondale have found a shape that they seem to be falling on, and I think there's a few similarities here. I think the seat tube is one example, and I think the new, relatively new Delta steer tube, which is like a triangular shaped steer tube, which allows them to squeeze all the cabling through the head tube without making the head tube really wide. I think that's the other design element that is being shared across pretty much all of their new drop bar bikes, and that then flows on to like head tube shape and all the shaping that surrounds that. So I'm not surprised that a lot of these are starting to look the same, but Ron, you sort of teased the idea of like it slightly being a confusing range now, and I actually agree. I think the Synapse on paper reads almost like a gravel bike. It doesn't read like a pure road bike to me when you're starting to talk about 42 mil tire clearance in the back of this thing. Yeah, I mean, how would you break it down for people now?
I'm going to go back to my earlier answer, Dave, to answer that question, because I'd said pick the bike that best suits your needs, and that's maybe not to contradict myself, but what we could end up seeing here is riders buying the Synapse as a gravel bike, especially if you're not like motivated by 2.2 mountain bike tires and stuff like that. And I think it's not there. So yeah, the important thing is if you like the look of these bikes, the good news is you can pick a bike that suits your needs. But if your needs are gravel or your needs are road, there's still neither bike is going to cover each. No bike is going to cross over those two disciplines perfectly well, as much as they look like each other. And the reason for that, I think, lies in the BB drop and the trail that you get with each of these bikes. And with the Synapse, you're getting a bike that is, it doesn't have as much bottom bracket clearance. So your overall system height will be lower in the Synapse, which is more in line with a road setup. And the trail, you're getting a 61 mil trail on a 56 millimeter Synapse, whereas that goes up to 65 on the Super X. And although that 65 is it's lower than some gravel race bikes that I have ridden, but it's about the gravel race bike trail figure that I would be aiming for myself. But on a road bike, I think it's just going to feel a bit sort of lazy.
The confusing thing there is they're probably also using different tire sizes to calculate that number.
Yeah.
So you probably find that they end up being much closer to each other when you match the tire sizes. But
I mean, yeah, the fork rake is the same, and the head tube angle it's only like 0.3 degrees of a difference in them. So yeah, you're right.
I haven't looked, but it's very possible the forks are actually the same. With that 47 mil tire clearance, and yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at the Synapse and the Super X, which is their gravel race bike, and I'm actually seeing more similarities than I am seeing differences. And I think the biggest difference I've spotted is just in the stack height. The Super X is more racy. It's like 15 mil lower in most sizes versus the Synapse. But yeah, they both sort of overlap and converge in a kind of confusing way. And I think for most people, it's going to be like the question mark of, do you want a comfortable road bike that you can put 40s on and do gravel on, then get the Synapse, or do you want a slightly racier gravel bike that can be a comfortable road bike, then get the Super X? And right now, what I'm actually seeing is like your purchase decision might simply come down to something as simple as like storage hatch in the down tube, or whether you want smart sense or not. Whether you want those integrated electronics. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised that an endurance road bike is overlapping so closely with their gravel race bike now. There's differences, but it's nuanced.
Just on that trail, I quickly ran a calculator there, and yeah, the 0.3 degree of head tube angle, the Super X having a 71 degree head tube angle, and the Synapse having a 71.3, with the same tire will create about 2 mil of difference in trail.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
enough for you to feel, but not enough for most to bother.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably not enough to really. Yeah, just it's enough to probably disregard everything I said about trail.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's an interesting conversation. Who knows? Maybe we'll return to these exact bikes in like it could be kind of a fun bike review comparison of like, I'm thinking out loud here as I'm figuring it out, but it could actually be quite fun to compare a Synapse against a Super X against a Super 6 and sort of try figure out where the line is these days.
I had the Super 6 and I was supposed to get a Super X, but I've just been so swamped over the last few months I haven't brought that in yet. It could be an interesting one.
All right, let's move on. But I'd say it's safe to say there's some unanswered questions there. But anyway, new Cannondale Synapse, interesting one. I'll be looking more at that geometry as I work on an article related to that category of bikes. Is the tease I'll give. Still a couple of weeks away from publishing that one, but it's in the works. All right, Ronan, it's time for our quick tech bites segment. But before we get there, I just wanted to give a little bit of a plug to a conversation you and I had a week ago, and it's on your Performance Process channel. What was that conversation?
It was about how to go about, actually kind of relevant to the conversation we just had, how to go about choosing an aero road bike. Basically, we went through a checklist of things that you should look at when making a new bike purchase, and they sort of all revolved around this concept of usable aero and how to ensure that the new aero bike that you're looking at will actually be aero on the road and allow you to be aero, which is even more important.
Spoiler alert, it starts with a bike fit. But do check out the whole episode because, I think there was some pretty awesome tips shared within. So
I think we're going to have a written article on that this week also.
Nice one.
And I do also have to say, because I'm quite hungry, that every time you say quick tech bites, I think of chicken nuggets.
Yes. Good for the kids and for the adults.
You eat half their dinner before you get it on the plate.
Cool. All right, well, while we're plugging podcasts, I mentioned it earlier, but there is also a special episode of Geek Warning this week. It's our second version of the Info Review episode. And on that one, Alex, Suvi, and I talk about the things we've been testing. Bikes on our mind, gear that we've been liking lately, and members that are tuned in at the end of the episode can hear about just a few things that we've, I guess, been underwhelmed by or a little bit bothered by in over the last month with testing. But do check that out. You'll find it in the Geek Warning channel and everywhere else you get this podcast.
You should be much more clickbaity about that, Dave. I mean, you should say 5 things that we hate about cycling industry in 2025.
I can't do it. Just can't do it. Yeah. I mean, the last true clickbait article I did was when it's now a generation ago. They've come out with the new one since. When Shimano released a new... No, it was when Shimano released a new Ultegra, but it was actually a fishing reel. And this is still while Shimano was at 11 speed. So I just ran the headline of Shimano Ultegra gets released, and then basically it was a 1-sentence article saying hook, line, and sinker clickbait. Yeah. Anyway. That really upset a lot of people, but just know I found it hilarious. So one of Cycling Tips' most read articles. I feel a bit bad for that one. Anyway, very good.
Not to kill the buzz here, but like the thing about that is that being the most read the only thing the algorithms would have seen is that was a highly read article, and so the ad sales would have went through the roof. And so it was. It goes back to our earlier point about terrible for our reader, fantastic for the ad sales. No, you weren't. It wasn't the intention there, but it's just sort of.
It definitely wasn't the intention. I was just giggling at it. But you'll be happy to know that Shimano did come out with another generation of that Ultegra reel, and I refrained from covering it based on the anger that I caused in the last one. So, but that does also remind me that I currently, if you Google Wout van Aert chain wax, you get a Google AI generated response that gives you the answer about Wout van Aert's chain wax, which is actually an April Fool's joke I wrote a couple of years ago that has now become a legitimate response from the AI. So, needless to say, April Fool's jokes have become quite dangerous.
As artificially intelligent as AI is, it still can't work out that things published on April 1st probably aren't worth including.
Yep. So... Anyway, all right, let's get some fresh tech. Top of the list is Canyon in the USA have partnered with Amazon, or specifically Amazon Prime.
I thought you were going to say started making a suspension fork.
It seems they're doing that too, but we've been there. Let's move on. Let's move on to this thing. Canyon in the USA selling through Amazon USA. This is a bit of an unexpected one, but I guess, the biggest consumer direct online bike brand selling through the biggest e-com platform in the USA is also not massively surprising. It is important to note that this is only for more entry-level Canyon bikes. It's sub $3,500 bikes. It's not like any of the more performance-oriented road bikes that Canyon sells. It's really more like their utility range, some of their more entry-level mountain bikes. But still, dare I say this is perhaps a sign of like maybe Canyon testing the waters a bit and seeing how this works out for them. Yeah, I mean, it'll really be interesting to see where this goes in future. But there's, however, whatever you think of them, there's no denying that Amazon is a behemoth and is able to sell, is able to move units if you have your product on there. So yeah, one to watch more than anything. Next one on the list, this is just a real quick one. We spoke about Trick Stuff last week. They make some of the most desirable mountain bike brakes in the world, and that they were opening up in the USA. A week has gone by, and they've announced, DT Swiss has announced that they're actually shuttering the German-based headquarters of Trick Stuff and sort of integrating it into the European business of DT Swiss. So you'll find the roles sort of being moved in between offices in Biel and Switzerland, in DT Swiss's Germany office, and with manufacturing, I believe, moving to DT Swiss's facility in Poland. So yeah, a few changes coming there, but DT Swiss has a long history of acquiring and I guess doing a pretty good job of integrating the brand. So probably sucks for the staff that may have been left behind in the transition with Trick Stuff, but I would expect the product to continue sort of as you know it. So next on the list, Vittoria have updated the Rubino tire. So the Rubino is kind of like their well-priced training tire, endurance road tire. It comes stock on a lot of surprisingly on a lot of endurance road bikes, but I've sort of found it to be a good value pick for people that hate punctures. They've got a new tubeless ready version. They're claiming 11% improvement in rolling resistance, which truthfully probably isn't hard. 5% more grip and a 10% weight reduction compared to the model before it. While the tube type version, the clincher version, is claiming improvements in rolling resistance by 5%, improvements by extra 5% grip and 12% less weight. So some new construction, some new updated compounds in the rubber there. But I kind of like this tire. I've long bought them or recommended them for others just based on the purchase price compared to so many other tires in the market. In Australia you can often find these for like $60-$70 a piece, while likes of a GP 5000 race tire or the all conditions tires now like 120 Australian. So it can be a big difference when you're buying a pair of these. So I'm pleased to see them update this model. I'll be eager to try it out in the future.
Speaking of things that all look the same and are kind of confusing and do different things, tires.
Yes,
there's the Rubino, and then there's also like the Corsa Next, which I thought was kind of the training
Yep.
endurance.
Corsa
tire.
Next Control, which would be like their endurance. Yeah.
I mean, it's I'm not picking on Vittoria here. This is the same for
No.
Continentals, maybe even more confusing because the Contis tend to even just look the same. But yeah, I don't know how you avoid that because rubber is kind of just rubber.
Yeah, I think the Rubino, the way I'm picturing in my head, is probably going to be a cheaper option. So yeah, whereas anything with the Corsa branding, I can kind of consider to be a more premium tire and expect it to be priced as such. Whereas the Rubino is like that more Conti Gator skin kind of competitor, and yeah, has traditionally been really well priced. So one to watch out for. Next on the list, Park Tool have just released a bunch of free tools, which is kind of fun. They have joined the growing list of brands to offer 3D print files for download. So yeah, you can now mount a select number of your Park tools straight onto your pegboard with these free to download files. So yeah, other brands that do this include Abbey Bike Tools, Hope, and SRAM have a few little tools that are available for print as well. I'm sure there's others on that list, but
at the risk of giving them an idea, but is it surprising to you that these tools are free? The files are free. I'm surprised there's not some small charge them just because they could charge them.
Yeah, I mean the holders are only good if you already own the Park Tool tools. Like they're very specifically shaped to Park Tool items, so they're probably thinking like this just builds loyalty and holds the things that you've already given us money for. So yeah, Abbey Bike Tools does the same with some of their tools. The difference is Abbey Bike Tools, I think, also, I may be up for another corrections corner here, but I think they were also selling the prints if you didn't have your own printer. So like you could either download it for free or buy the holder. But yeah, maybe Park Tool will go that way as well. I mean, some of these holders look quite nice, and yeah, a shout out to Escape member Chris Heerschap, who runs an Etsy store with all sorts of fun 3D printed tools that we talk about quite regularly. And yeah, I have to say some of Park Tools' latest files look like a few things that Chris has had for a few years. But yeah, either way, nice to have options. Speaking of tools, Feedback Sports have released yet more things. They've been on a bit of a roll with new releases as of late, and yeah, they've added new T-handle hex Torx key set to the mix. Looks a lot like most people's T-handle tools, but you can remove the handles on these for compact storage within the provided roll. And they've also got a new chain whip replacement tool. So they previously had like a chain whip plier, and they've got a version that sort of supersedes that, and it looks it's basically like the spring loaded thing that you open up the jaws of, and it sort of just naturally clamps onto a cassette cog anywhere between like a 10 to 24 tooth size cassette cog. Works on all the speeds. It's very similar in design to something like that Bursman and Triple B and a few other brands also sell. But yeah, I've been liking this design of tool, and I have to say that the Feedback Sports one, while I haven't used it yet, I'm eager to, because yeah, it looks like they've improved on some design elements that others have missed on. So yeah, a nice alternative to the chain whip.
If I've already got the previous Feedback Sports one, is there a reason to upgrade to this one?
Anytime a new tool comes out, I'm quite certain the old one just combusts.
Okay, so maybe I no longer have it. I thought I had it.
Yeah, you might not. It might not be there anymore. No, I mean the previous Feedback Sports one was actually quite good. I would say my criticisms of it were it lacked leverage, like just by its general compact profile. And the other thing is SRAM now warn against using tools of that variant on its transmission cassettes, because those cassettes are hollow, and I think it's something to do with like the clamping force. It's something we spoke about on Ask a Wrench previously. But beyond that, I would say if that plier tool worked for you, then keep using it, because it was actually quite a nice tool. So all right, well, speaking of Ask a Wrench, I think it's time for it. So for those on the free feed, thanks for tuning in. Please share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Tell people, tune into Geek Warning if they like bike tech, or if they're just terrible at it, then hopefully, yeah, send some more people towards us. Of course, you don't have to stop listening here. We are about to have Ask a Wrench, where Ronan and I answer questions from our members, and you can keep listening by becoming a member of Escape Collective. So head to escapecollective.com/join. You can become a member. It takes just a few easy steps, and from there on, you'll be able to listen to all of the member exclusive episodes across all of the channels straight in your podcast player of choice. It's that easy.
Give them a teaser of the questions we're answering this week.
Well, one of them is
classified. What are you missing out on?
Yeah. One of them is classified, literally about the classified hub. And we'll also effectively pick one. We're going to just talk about CO2 inflator heads, which is a request from a member. So, yeah, we'll jump into that. If you're on the free feed, this is where we say goodbye to you. Thanks for tuning in. And for our members, keep listening.